I'd like to, begin by asking whoever's on the panel here right now. I see Nitin, I see Hitesh, I see Marty, I see Syamantak, and I see Akhauri. So what kind of an impact has India made? I'll ask Akhauri, who's been beginning with Akhauri since his name begins with an A. What kind of an impact has India made in the global market as far as VFX is concerned? Is it wide enough, or are we deep enough, or are we just kind of scratch the surface?
Thank you, Anil, and thank you everyone for having us on the panel. And hello to all my co-panelists, some of whom I have I know, and some of whom I'm meeting for the first time. So thank you, and thanks again, Anil, for hosting this session. One of the pitfalls of having a name that begins with A. So you're hosting it, and I'm sort of next in line with the first question. So I think everything is kind of, we have to look at it from it's relative. I think from where we were, let's say 10 years ago, the contribution and the impact is much larger. But if one were to sort of make a very honest assessment, I think we are sort of just about scratching the surface. There is so much headroom, and there is such tremendous room for growth that we are just if we get some things right over the next few years, I think there's tremendous potential.
Okay, that's a general statement. I'll move on to, but thank you for that. I'll move on to Marty, who's looking at, though it's not alphabetical now. I think you've entered the market recently. You're in animation. I'm hoping you'll do some VFX going forward also. What attracted you to come to India?
Well, yeah, we do. We're an animation studio. We've done a lot of like full CG. Actually, we mostly do full CG. Yeah. It was a lot of kids stuff first, but we're doing a lot of Warhammer brand stuff, which is cinematics, which I think kind of crosses into the VFX world. It's more feature quality. We're using Unreal. We're using a lot of different techniques, and the focus is it's a more VFX mindset. So I think it's relevant that that I'm here. Thank you Gupta VK for the invite, and thank you guys for having me here. I think what attracted us to India is I think there's a huge amount of talent of artists and organizers and technology actually in India, and the CG industry has been going for what, 20 years strong, 30 years maybe now. I'm not quite sure. And I've personally been, connected for at least 10 years working with Indian companies, and coming from Toronto myself, actually working directly with Indian nationals who've, repatriated to Canada or whatever. So there's an enormous amount of talent. And I think, it's the right place to go for us. It's in Asia. We're in Asia, in Bangkok. We share a similar kind of mindset. I think we share the same kind of climate, and so yeah, there's just a lot of things that tick the boxes when working with India.
Thanks for that. And Syamantak, your company is also set up recently, right? If I'm correct. So what attracted you all here? And he said talent, also similar climate. And what attracted you all to set up an outpost here?
Well, for Outpost, I think I echo what Marty said. It was primarily talent. The fact that the talent in India is now comparable to anywhere else in the globe, and that there is a potential to grow that in an exponential way, I think is really lucrative for studios to come in and set up another site here that can work in parallel with the other sites. So not just outsource, but to be able to contribute and at all levels of production.
Okay. Now, Hitesh, you're basically an Indian studio which has gone international. Correct me if I'm wrong.
We've been international in the sense that I started it from the US. I still live in the US, but we've been in India and had smaller outfits elsewhere. But I've been in the industry in this bridge between at least North America and India for the last 20 years, which beats me. But when I started, it was just trying to bring awareness that, hey, you could source talent from India, you could get work done. And here we are, some nearly 2 decades later from when I started. And no one needs convincing that there is, one, a cost advantage, and two, a volume of labor that that is not just about low-end work, it's all kinds of work. As I think that was just mentioned, we've kind of moved away from just outsourcing to sourcing, and that's an important transition. And to your original question, I would agree with Akhauri that we're just scratching the surface, because India will be a center to reckon with for any production. You at least have to put it into the economic equations that the accountants go through at the beginning of every project. How could you not look at the possibilities, whether it's directly or as pieces coming through India? It's baked into the accounting, and we know it's real when it's baked into the accounting from the front end.
Great. So, cost, talent, cost arbitrage and talent are two of the significant contributors. But is that enough to build a large industry? Is that enough? I'll ask Akhauri again. Is that enough? What else do we need to do to get to that? We are currently at about 4,000 crores. 85% of that or 75% of that is coming from sourced or outsourced work. In Hitesh's words, it's sourced. We still call it outsourcing because we're working for international companies. But the domestic market is quite pygmied. It's only 25%. So what else do we need for us to really accelerate growth in India? Akhauri.
Well,
you're investing, I agree, but you're doing it for global clients.
Yeah, so I think
Nitin, I haven't asked Nitin a question. Sorry, I missed out on Nitin.
No, please.
Yeah, please. Because he's been lurking in the corner quietly. You're an Indian studio, purely an Indian studio servicing television. Nitin.
Yeah, I think for us, you just mentioned that how to grow the domestic consumption. So we are the one, we are servicing not only for our Indian TV shows and digital series and films, but also we have seen the last 2-3 years a lot of outsourced work coming to us. And as rightly mentioned by Marty and Syamantak, that talent and the cost are the two key advantages which we have.
But is that enough is what I'm asking. Is that enough? What else do we need?
Well, else is that I think still we are working towards, because one of our facilities in Bhubaneswar, we are trying to develop the skill development program along with the government. So there we are trying to create a factory of these kind of talent, so that the work for the domestic as well as for the international work, whatever we're getting, we are able to, service that. So I think that's where we are trying to exponentially see some growth, where we are, growing not only the kind of a requirement coming from the Indian film industry, but also from the outside. Okay, great.
Akhauri, now it's over to you.
So, Anil, I think it's also something interesting that somebody on your previous panel also mentioned. I think if you look at, obviously the first two building blocks would be, you need talent, for example, which is very, very correct. But it's also interesting is the way films are made. I think if you look at it how, and speaking strictly for VFX, because for VFX is mostly a service line revenue stream. Unlike Marty, for example, where his business would probably include IP as well, apart from service line, right? So initially, I think it would be that what can we do? We need to sort of change something here on this film. We need to add this here. From that basic kind of VFX that was done, I think today it would not be wrong to say that you're actually empowering filmmakers to tell different kinds of stories. And that, I think, as more and more people who make films realize that, they're not even limited by their imaginations, because at the end of the day, we are a derived industry. For VFX in particular, the growth of VFX will really depend on what are the traditional now, what are the sources, what are the source material that needs VFX? Traditionally, that has been entertainment and films. In animation, you've moved beyond entertainment to other sectors. You've been talking about things like the metaverse and things like that. Yes, those will add elements that could propel VFX's growth. But I think, I suspect that for a long time, it is still going to be, for VFX particularly, it's going to be entertainment. And if it is entertainment, then I think what we have seen in the last 10 or 15 years has been a sea change in how stories are told and how films are made. And if that continues, I think that will be the third building block, because things that we could not conceive of 30 years ago are actually run of the mill today.
Okay.
Let me chime in and add to that. I think it's a long tail model. To Akhauri's point about being able to tell stories, we're opening up to a whole new line of storytelling that wasn't possible, or you could not green light it because the economics would have been too high. Now, both because of technology and because the industry, the capacity of the industry is there to support this kind of visual effects work, the storytelling has boomed. And of course, the OTT certainly have played a key role in allowing a voice, creating a voice for many storytellers, not just the tent poles that, the industry used to be driven by tentpole films, and we see a gradual transition or widening of that base to both more storytellers and a wider range of budgets for visual effects.
Thank you for that again. Now, but there are many countries competing for this VFX work. It's not just India. We have a cost arbitrage, but other countries do. Some of them in East Europe, possibly. Some of them have cost arbitrage. Some of them in Southeast Asia. So, Marty, how does India deal with this?
I was thinking actually just what the others were saying, that especially about the outsource model, moving to the source model, the storytelling. I think, from an outsider looking in, going to India as a place to source talent or to get work done, I think there's a gap that could be filled. And if we're talking about India growing into its own, developing its own stories, growing into a globally dominated content producing area or region, I think, there's money in India. There's people who've got money to fund filmmaking. There's storytellers, there's content, there's tons of rich tapestry of stories to draw from Indian culture, from modern effects of India around the world, endless amounts of content. There's really high skill in technology, there's really high skill in CG work, but where there's a gap that I find is the pre-production, the concept art, the storyboarding, the designing, the taking it from that I've got an idea and I've got the money, waving the check, to into production. I think that's a gap from an outsider that I see is could be filled. I think I don't know what that is, if that comes from a focus on skill development from the government or from the industry or whatever. I think, pre-production drawing and designing and storyboarding, it's not a kind of talent that is geographically specific. I think, and people from all over the world can do this. So I don't know. I think that would be a good area where if India put more focus on that, I think it would expand all sorts of possibilities.
So that'll be accretive income that would come, revenue that would come into the country. It could mean existing studios, or it could mean new studios which are focusing on the skill set.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyone has any views? Syamantak, do you want to share your views on this? Can you unmute yourself, please?
So yes, I think the recent initiative that the government is also taking is kind of geared towards, promoting more production. And I think these are the exact factors that will, be brought into focus and be worked upon as we, expand across the entire nation and try and develop the skill sets there. So if you want to really enhance production, it's a key factor that you kind of address all parts of it. And pre-production being the starting point would get addressed eventually as we start focusing on them. So I think it's a great initiative that the government is taking in that direction.
So Nitin, you said, sorry, somebody was saying something? Did I interrupt somebody? Please go ahead if you were, whoever was speaking. No? Okay. Nitin, so you're working on skill development in Orissa. Are you working in it? Which areas are you focusing on? Is it?
So basically, what we have done, we have approached Kalinga Institute there, and what we are trying to is that we want to help them, enable them to make a curriculum. Right now, as a animation VFX, as a curriculum is not there as a full-fledged 2 to 3 years program. So what we have been working with them is to drive that kind of curriculum in their institute and university. Secondly, what we are assuring them is that since we have a full-fledged studio there, they can get training, that they can be absorbed later on also. So those are the few initiatives we have already started, and we have been training more than 50 people in the last 1 year in that facility, and trying to create the employment as well. And so now what we are going ahead is the structure way. So what government has recently taken initiative is really good, because now we can formally get some even funding also. So like allocation of land towards the center of excellence, where we can position. Earlier we have done everything ourselves, but now when we approach, so we can get that kind of support from the government, and whether center of excellence or some kind of incubation center where we can try to develop some employment opportunities as well.
Yeah. So the theme of this session is growing $100 billion industry globally, and India getting a larger share of that. We have a very small share of the ecosystem. How do we move towards? Is it just, should we also go towards a push towards a domestic work? And how does that happen? How do we go about making that happen? I know OTT is encouraging that. I know there are new filmmakers coming in, but what else can we do?
One thing I'll observe is we talk about a large base of talent pool, and I myself said that at the beginning, but it's a very lopsided talent pool in the sense that it's kind of bottom heavy. And one of the struggles that at least I face in my studio, and I'm sure some others face, is getting senior talent that has that seasoned experience base is so much harder. And we wind up poaching each other's companies, poaching the talent from other companies. We don't poach for the lower end talent. We're poaching for that higher end talent because it is relatively scarce despite having a large volume. So if there's one problem that would unleash the potential for growth in India, it is what are the ways in which we can make sure that talent growth happens where it benefits the higher end, not just that we add more freshers, as you will, into the mix, which definitely is needed and helpful, but it doesn't help if I have 1,000 freshers and 10 senior leaders who really can talk to senior team members of the production house. That's a problem we face. I'd be open to understanding what others see.
Yep.
I think that's sorry, if I may respond, if I may add to that, Anil. I think Hitesh has raised a very valid point. So we do talk about the fact that India has a very sort of large creative ecosystem, which is correct. We do have a over 100-year history in sort of the film business, so to speak. We're also one of the few countries that actually sort of has a thriving sort of entertainment ecosystem that does not subsist on government support. But I think Hitesh has hit the nail on the head. It's a very, at least in our business, it's very lopsided, because I think one thing that we keep sort of, I think many people miss, and, I'm happy to sort of be corrected if, what I'm saying, I think that our business, for people to grow in our business, it's like the apprenticeship models of old. Right, you understand? It's not enough for sort of, for somebody to have sort of learned all the right skills at the right place, for example. So when we keep talking about centers of excellence and training institutes, those are actually just the first step. I think, even in your previous panel, there are sort of companies in India, many of our peers have actually for many years run very, very large formal training institutes. And having sort of been a part of some of those myself, I know that it takes sometimes up to a year to have people come up to just speed to do basic stuff. So we do have, and while the number is growing today, and it will continue to grow, we don't have senior supervision skills either on the creative side or on the production side or on the management side. And that is what is going to be the next bottleneck. you could have, as more and more companies enter, the more and more work is done. I think somebody on your last panel mentioned that they farm out 500, 600 man days of work to other studios every day. That is a significant amount of work, and that will sort of improve the talent and sort of hone the skills of people who are doing those that kind of work. But what about the people who are actually supervising that kind of work, who are actually creatively sort of making sure that that work is really, really up to speed? And that, I think, is where the next big challenge for us will be. And I completely agree with Hitesh on that.
So, Marty, you want to come up with some solutions for this?
I'd love to have some solutions, because I don't think this issue is exclusive to India. I think this is a global concern in our industry. Artists and managers, they're like two opposing forces, and they're exact opposites. And I mean, if artists were organized, I'd be out of a job. So I think trying to grow and find that magical person that is a talented artist that is good at and also willing to supervise and manage and be a leader. It's something I haven't figured out myself. I wish I could, but I think really all you can do is put the own focus on your own. Look at your own house and be an example. And even if you train those people up and they leave, at least they spread it around and it'll come back. I think I once saw a cartoon, a little comic panel that was, many, many years ago. Somebody said, it's a manager talking to a CEO or something, saying, what if we train them and they leave? And the CEO says, well, what if we don't train them and they stay? So, that's the thing. I think we got to do it in our own house. And it's something we in Thailand, we really focus on, because, Thailand doesn't have the largest talent pool, as Hitesh said. India's got the numbers. There's a volume of people that can be trained. Thailand doesn't have that volume, and so we have to look at building the people internally and making sure they get chances and support. And it's hard, but you got to squeeze it in.
Also, Marty, would be, it is an organic process, right? I mean, there's you really can't compress the timelines for that. So, that journey that somebody has to go through from being the sort of, from starting out to actually reaching a supervisory level is not something that you can really say that, I've discovered this magic formula that can make this happen in 3 years, for example.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's something that has to click in the person's head when they're ready. It took myself years and years to learn how to actually be a manager and not do everything myself, but actually go, people want to be told what to do. You got to get over this sort of, what do you call it, this being considerate kind of thing, or this guilt of, I'm on top of people. But yeah, you can't force that. It comes when it comes,
there's also a process towards it. I think, Akhauri, you might be saying that, but just like a doctor gets better, he or she gets better the more patients you see. In our industry, it's the more shots you see. If you see certain types of shots over and over again, you'll be really good at those. The more diversity of shots you see, the better off you're going to be in handling more generalized stuff. So as you say, it's hard to compress how many shots you can push through, but that, to use your word, that apprenticeship model is what's needed, because how are we going to accelerate that where the artists experience enough shots on their own to be able to do the next one, fully on their own, or even design the approach to it. I think some of the things we were talking about earlier was, it's one thing to be able to execute on clear instructions, but what's the percentage of talent that has the ability to design the work approach? That is where we're struggling, and that's where we need to push more and more this apprenticeship model. And I would agree, it's kind of a slow process, but we have to keep that burn going to really inculcate an apprenticeship model. And currently in the current marketplace where people are hopping around, that does not necessarily it creates an inflation in value in the potential value in terms of salaries, but it doesn't necessarily help the growth of the artist that's often necessary. But anyway, that's a side point.
I get it, yeah, because I don't want to make this a discussion about poaching alone, because we can have a separate session, as somebody has mentioned in the chat box. So one is we need to hone good, supervisory level talent, which can actually look after projects as such, or guide or mentor younger talent. What else could we do? Could be to grow this industry, accelerate this industry faster? Could we approach new sectors like Edtech? Could we approach, get into new sectors like education technology, or the apps which are providing a lot of video content? Is that a sector where you could get into with our high-cost companies like Contiloe? Maybe an Outpost may not do it, but a Contiloe, which is Indian, made in India, could you all do that, Contiloe? And Nitin?
Yeah, so that's why I said what we are trying, not only focusing only on Orissa as a state. So what we are also trying now with Maharashtra, a couple of, like in Pune also, we are in discussion to open this kind of courses, once we have started. So I think it's very rightly mentioned by you that we need to train the trainer. So that's why even inside our facility also, we have been appointing those senior people to mentor them, and also, on a monthly basis, do some sessions so that they can upgrade the skills of these people. So I think that's the only way where we can associate with multiple universities and get this curriculum also officially done. I think hardly any university giving these kind of courses right now. So I think that's how we feel.
That's one by partnering with universities, and also possibly partnering with Edtech platforms to provide these kind of courses, which could be not the best way. Like Hitesh said, you've got to be a part of the shot, and to get that experience and learn more about it. But there could be some training given in that area. But what about providing services to the Edtech industry? Do you think that's an area of opportunity for the VFX industry? Any one of you? Yeah. Anyone else wants to step in? Hitesh, Akhauri, Nitin said yeah, Marty, Syamantak.
What I would just generally, what I've observed for my own company is we tend to, in order to grow, you have to check the market fundamentals. Is there enough demand in the marketplace for the thing you're doing? And as everything we are attesting to, and the very reason this conference even exists is there's a boom there's a demand boom in VFX. We don't need to look far and wide for new things to do. We need to figure out how we capture more of what is already there. So within our company, we try to avoid the next shiny object to chase after. We try to say, how do we do better what we're already doing? How do we double down on it? How do we expand just on the margins or the scope of what we do, but still in the same marketplace? So I'm a big fan of VFX is on a massive growth because of all of the market fundamentals. I want to stick to the entertainment side and really keep an eye on the other areas. I don't want to, bury my head in the sand and assume none of the other areas are going to rise. I want to watch, just like we've been watching virtual production, we'll watch the metaverse, we'll watch other areas, but I know where the revenue is now in the next 2 to 3 years, where our operational focus needs to be. And if I kind of project by way of analogy to the country, it feels like that seems to be a similar remedy there. How do we focus on things that we're already doing better, but that we're having trouble scaling, instead of trying to find new sectors to serve?
Okay, anyone else has a different point of view?
So I think, Anil, my point would be that I think looking at it, and there's, I know currently in EdTech, for example, there's a boom, but that's more to do with animation and CG. And personally speaking, I don't see actually that in the near future, sort of the mix changing to more VFX.
Okay.
So.
But what about low end? I'm talking about low end. No, I'm not talking about high end VFX like you do in entertainment.
No, but you see, it depends on the source material. Most of these things that they're creating right now are actually sort of, they're not shot and then worked on.
Sure.
They're actually created in the CG environment. At least that's most of the learning modules that I have seen. So will that mix change? It's currently very skewed towards animation. Will it change? Possibly, but my personal belief is that I don't think it makes sense because, unless there's something that I'm missing here, I don't think it's going to change in a hurry. I think it's just the animation is more suited to the message they want to convey.
Okay, Marty, any different point of view, or is it the same?
I don't know a great deal about VFX in general. I've been locked into CG animation for for too many years, but I would lean towards what Hitesh was saying for sure. I think you go to a restaurant and there's too many things on the menu, they don't really do anything that well. But yeah, there is definitely an unquenchable thirst for content in the world right now with multiple competing streaming sites. There's just I mean, there isn't enough content, and it's just growing and growing. And I think, yeah, the answer is not to go seeking out other areas. It's more, how can we handle the volume quicker, faster, keep the quality bar high? And I think technology plays a lot of part in that as well too. Unreal's a game changer. And when Unreal 5 comes out, I mean, that's big, huge step going to happen. It's going to change everybody's lives, I think, to some degree. But yeah, I think it's the battle for the resources. It's a battle for the seniors. It's a battle for the supervisors globally, not just in India. And it's a battle to how can we all do all this content that everybody demands.
Okay, so you're even reaching out to new geographical areas for work. Is that something which we are not doing as a nation, as an industry? Anyone has any views on that? Could we? So you haven't spoken much, Syamantak. Are we reaching out to all the geographical areas for work? Can you unmute yourself? Unmute yourself.
Well, as a company, I think we are open to look at that, but currently there is. I feel it's not the amount of work that's a challenge. Like we're all saying here, it's the talent, the senior talent that's a bigger challenge, and to get them, getting more work would be an easier part if you have the team in place that can manage that work. Now, it's a tried and tested method that there are two ways of getting people skilled. One is whether you make them go through tons of shots, which over a period of years they will learn and adapt and improve their skills. The second is have someone actually guide them and mentor them, which is also a proven way of getting people up to speed quickly. The challenge we face is with the limited number of people at the supervisory level, how can we actually have them impart the skills and the training and the knowledge and the experience they have to the other people. There has to be an effective way of transitioning or transferring that knowledge over to the younger generation. I think that's a problem that we need to address, because sourcing work then is not. Content is getting created everywhere. To me, that's not the primary problem at this point.
So yeah, I really want a magic formula we can accelerate this industry further and faster. Anyone has any answers? That's what we're trying to look at. How do we build a $100 billion industry for the world, as well as getting a larger share for India? Any answers, any solutions you all can think of?
We can compete with the tax incentives of Canada.
Okay, so you're saying compete with the tax incentives, but the previous panel said they don't want too many incentives. That's something which is a contradicting. I've got a question from the audience. 1 second. So there's a question here which has come in. Is there any growth in VFX animation industry we will see in tier 2 or tier 3 cities in the coming years, as smart city concepts by central government giving subsidies, incentives, taxes, rebates, etc., etc.? So are we going to see that in India, in tier 2, tier 3 cities?
I hope so.
You hope to. Where are you located? Where's your studio located in India now? We
are in Mumbai.
Okay, great, fantastic. How did you grow your studio in Bangkok? What was the story behind it?
We started, M2 is a Danish company. We're owned by M2, which is in Denmark, and we had Lego as a client. So we started out with some commercial work, some TVCs, and a series got brought in, actually, which was done in collaboration with a studio that M2 opened in Bangkok and Prime Focus, who at that time opened up their animation division for the first time. They'd only done VFX, so they opened up an animation division. And we did a series, and I was brought in 10 years ago to help sort of deal with the series and build the company. We were 42 people when I joined. We're about 250 people now in Bangkok, and we're 50 and growing in Mumbai. We're probably going to be up to about 150 by the end of the year in Mumbai alone. So we're going to be close to 400 people across a couple of countries. But yeah, we started doing series work, and we brought in international people that had the experience to sort of train or help the locals, the Thai people, kind of adapt to the international standards. Thailand actually has a sort of under the radar CG industry that's been going for a long time then, but it's been only for kind of a domestic market. So there was a bit of adaptation to how does the US or Europe want to do things versus how do things happen internally. So yeah, we just kept growing and adding people, and we've kept a stable sort of about 14 or 15% of foreigners, keeping it a multicultural studio, international studio, and we sort of rotate the international people that come in. So we sort of import the skills and import those skills, and then people move on and people grow. And so, I mean, that's sort of been our method for the last little bit.
So is that something, let's say, a Contiloe can use, or your Illusion Reality, Nitin?
Yeah, basically, that's what we are saying. Right now, all the key artists are, spread out in the key cities only. So I think the solution is that there are talent available in tier 2 and tier 3 cities. Right now, they're moving to, only Delhi, Bangalore, Mumbai, or Hyderabad. But I think clearly, if companies start setting up their studios in those tier 2, tier 3 cities, so definitely the growth will be big, and there are, it's all interlinked, as I mentioned to you. If the artist is getting growth opportunity in those towns, then they will not move to Mumbai only. So we are definitely looking, as I mentioned, in a couple of places to further establish. And there, what we can always tackle the concern or the challenges of the poaching also, because in these cities you will see very less attrition as compared to Mumbai, where we are not able to reduce that kind of percentage, in the attrition rate. So I think that will be a good way forward, where many studios can think in that line.
Okay. Another submission I have is we can move up by going up in the value chain of what work we do, and secondly, by charging more for the work we do. Is that a possibility going forward? Hitesh.
I've always been puzzled by the economics of VFX. You would think with the crazy amount of demand going on that we would have just supply demand, we'd have a greater say in at least increasing the pricing, but that doesn't seem to be. The industry somewhat locked in on it. Within reason, but yeah, definitely the way up, the way to greater success is to move up the value chain in the kind of work we're doing. But we're back to that same problem of, can we get the right kind of talent to help us rise? One of the key transformations is not doing parts of a shot in India, but doing complete shots and sequences in India. That's the transformational idea. And it doesn't matter whether it's for a small film or a big film. The idea is, can we get a complete pot of talent that can take it from work design, breakdown, all the way through execution fully in India, as opposed to some collaboration with either your local office of the same company back in the UK or somewhere in Canada or US. Instead of that, can we have the real success would be where more companies are able to produce end-to-end or full-blown visual effects. Back to my point about from outsourcing to sourcing kinds of, think about it as a normal VFX company.
Great. So, Akhauri, you want to add to that? I mean, how are you all looking at operating going forward?
No, so I think, that what we have actually, I personally have lived that journey. So, I have seen when we sort of, way back in 2010, when I stepped into the industry for the first time, it was literally, the low value, low end work, not enough talent. And the transition from there to, a more and more high value work, high end work, and that's only increasing. And as even what Hitesh pointed out, there is, for a lot of the companies, for example, for a lot of the larger companies that are sort of international companies here, they have started working along those lines of doing whole sequences and whole shots, and and that is again the natural transition of things, because most of these companies, when they started out sending work to India, it was essentially just farming out basic basic rotor prep kind of work to vendors, saw the value, saw the opportunity, started incubating their own growth businesses, which today, 2,000, 3,000 people doing significant amounts of fairly high level work. The idea is that how does this keep growing and spread to sort of all studios? But the fact is that this is what is actually creating an ecosystem. Those initial things that were done 10 or 12 years ago are what are sort of helping the industry develop and grow its talent today. And it will happen again.
Well, we want to accelerate that because the opportunities are tremendous.
Yes,
now, are we getting a larger piece? We have the talent, we have the money, but are we getting a larger piece of the growing pie? Or are we staying at the same piece percentage-wise? That's something which needs to really, and we need to work as an industry to get that.
I think we're getting a larger piece of a growing pie, but I'm not sure if, for example, Sam would agree with that or Hitesh would. But I do see the pie growing. I do see us getting a larger piece of it, and I actually see that growing. Now, how do we accelerate it is $1 billion question. I mean, if I knew that, I'd probably be doing it right now.
Specifically, it's $100 billion question.
Yeah, so we don't have answers after all this. Yeah, but we have to look for. Actually, we are running short on time now. We have to look for the senior talent, the supervisory talent. You said we don't need to. Once we have the people, then we can go and look at new geographical areas. We have to excel in what we are doing. Possibly start doing full scenes, full sequences, rather than that could help us in the process. And I believe in more companies like Framestore and Outpost investing in India could bring more work into India. And bot VFX possibly, expanding the scope of productions they're doing themselves, and then investing in the VFX of the productions that they're doing themselves. That could be another way. Is that any other thoughts on this, or are we done with this?
And filling the pre-production gap.
Yeah, filling the pre-production gap. Broadly, these are the broad takeaways. Last words from each of you all. I mean, we've got 5 or 6 takeaways from this.
If I can add just one more point to the conversation earlier about second-tier cities, I think one of the silver linings out of the pandemic was it forced us to reconcile this PC over IP technology and remoting, but it has opened up this whole new set of possibilities where previously larger facilities would always hesitate about fragmenting their operations because of technical limitations. So, but with PC over IP and similar technologies, it has allowed considering second-tier city operations to both leverage talent, and also even sometimes it's not just a matter of leveraging new talent. Sometimes people within the existing cities, like we have a lot of talent in Chennai, they come from other second-tier cities. They would love it if we opened up an office in a second-tier city, if there's enough of a cluster, and it's a win-win because they feel like they're managing their life better. Of course, we're living in a different stage in the economy where artists and workers in general are rethinking the relationship between employee and employer and lifestyle and everything else. In that context, the second-tier cities are a big part, at least of our growth plan, because now we can still manage through the technical challenge, operational challenges, and still use the talent that's in second-tier cities.
Okay, there are some questions which have been asked. Thanks for that, Hitesh. Would your company be willing to hire international senior supervisory talent to train and build teams in India? This is addressed to each one of you all. Say yes or no.
Yes.
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 All right. So share your credentials with Prashant. I think Prashant's from Australia, and he's a trainer also in Australia. Then Anik Patel is asking, a year ago, we started with virtual reality. Is there anything coming up from directors, producers adopting this new competitive technology in India as it is a huge opportunity for us in XR. That's what they're talking about. That's a question in the chat box. That's what I made sense of. Anyone wants to take this? No?
I don't know enough about virtual reality myself.
Yeah. So Akhauri, Nitin, Sam?
I don't, I mean, the only thing that I can say, which probably I think all the rest of our panelists will also sort of, have probably share the same opinion, is that I think we are ended up as not having enough use cases. And from everything that as Marty said, we don't know enough about it at this point of time, but it does seem to me that AR seems to have actually opened more possibilities for companies in this space rather than VR. And I think not that VR will not take off, but from everything that I've understood from people I talk to, I think the limitation is still the fact that there's the headsets and are cumbersome. They still leave people with feelings of dizziness, giddiness. That's my understanding, and therefore the use cases for actually testing out or doing entire projects in VR are very limited.
Okay, there's another question from Arun Kumar. I think this is the same Arun. If he's Arun Kumar, he's a veteran of this industry. How do you pitch for international projects? Who's going to answer that? Hitesh, you run quite a few.
You locate yourself in international destinations. That's been our formula.
What is that? Sorry, could you repeat yourself?
You have presence in those international locations, physical presence and offices.
Okay, Sam, any clues, any guidance?
No, actually, that what Hitesh has said actually goes a long way in being able to establish a connection with the teams there. So it's important to have a presence in each geography. That India approaching from India is not successful, but the success rate is much higher if you have a local presence.
Nitin?
No, well, I will say I don't think so. The presence is imminent for there. But what we are trying to do, we got recently Malaysian film as well as African series. So there, what we try to work with sometimes with the DI colorists, if they have done anything, then we can collaborate there. So these are the few ways, because we can't have presence in outside India and all the countries, or what I say. So what we try to do, we want to collaborate with the crews also, which are internationally acclaimed. So for our series, we are using a lot of international crew. So through their references also, we are getting a lot of business from Hollywood as well as from other countries. Okay, great. So actually, I believe that the virtual world has allowed a lot more international collaborations with possibly independent professionals and technicians. So that could be, like he said, is another source, and also to bridge the gap that we are facing in senior talent. There are lots of people who lost their jobs, not only in India, but internationally also. The demand is coming back. There are still people who need to get there, who still are without work. And so that could be another solution for this, for the gap that we are facing in this industry. But it's been great chatting with you all. You may not agree with me or may agree with me, I don't know. But these are just points I thought I'll express. So it's been nice chatting with you all. I hope India gets a larger share of this 100 billion global VFX industry, and we continue to reach that. What Ashish said, by 2030, we've got to generate 20 lakhs. That's 2 million jobs. We also have to get about a 5-6% share of the market. That's doubling it in 10 years. That's rapid growth. That'll, it's really requires some kind of a miracle for everything to fall in place. Thank you very much. It's been an interesting session chatting with you all.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Yeah, thanks, everybody. Nice to meet you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.